What if I told you that your obsession with Gantt charts, status reports, project methodologies, and collaboration tools is actually a waste of time? It sounds crazy, but the best project managers don't focus on those things. Now, if I had to condense my 30 years of experience in project management into a few simple rules, it would be these 6 laws of project management. And by the end of this video, you will know every single one. Let's dive in. The first law is Augustine's law. A bad idea executed to perfection is still a bad idea. Now, if a project is fundamentally a bad idea, then no amount of good work is magically going to turn that project into a good idea. You'll be amazed at the amount of money and effort that gets wasted on projects which are simply bad ideas. One notable example is the BBC's Digital Media Initiative, which was a £100 million flop. The project, which was intended to create a digital archiving system, started in 2008 and was finally scrapped in 2013. The main issue was that there were off-the-shelf solutions on the market that could effectively do the same job, rendering the project pointless to begin with. Even if the BBC did manage to develop their own solution, it would have been outdated fairly quickly. Why spend money reinventing the wheel? You have to wonder what the senior management at BBC were thinking when they put together the business case for this project. If you're interested in learning more about how to select winning projects, watch for the link to that video at the end of this one. Law number 2, Laken's law. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Now, project planning isn't about coming up with nice-looking Gantt charts and calculating the critical path. That's missing the point. It's actually thinking about the different steps in a project to help you make progress and manage risk, and making sure you have the right information, skills, and resources at each stage. For example, you wouldn't start building a house until the architectural design was complete. Unfortunately, that was the case in the construction of the Sydney Opera House in Australia. Construction began in 1959 before the architectural design of the Opera House was actually finalised, so it was impossible to fully plan out the construction. As a consequence, what was originally a 4-year, $7 million Australian dollar project instead became a 14-year, $102 million project. That's almost 15 times over budget, which would be totally unacceptable by today's standards. In reality, we don't always have everything we need to create a full project plan, and that's okay because the finer details can always be worked out later. But what you shouldn't do is jump into a project where you haven't determined the full scope or understood the key requirements. Now, some of you might be sitting there and thinking, well, what about agile projects? Good question. To keep a long story short, agile projects don't work well with fixed budgets and timelines, but there are cases, particularly in product management, where an agile approach is well suited. I'll put a link to another video on that topic at the end of this one. Law number 3, Fitzgerald's law. There are 2 states to any large project: too early to tell and too late to stop. Now, a good way to think about this is the sunk cost fallacy. Organizations have a habit of continuing to plow more money into a doomed project in the hope that it will eventually succeed. The more money and resources that is plowed into a project, the harder it becomes to then kill the project and watch all that investment go down the drain. It can also be quite embarrassing to kill a project, particularly if you had a hand in approving it in the first place. A notable example of this is the UK National Health Service's National Program for IT, an attempt to digitise medical and health records with a massive project budget of £6 billion. It was a noble cause, but overly ambitious, and the project was hampered by a plethora of organisational and project vendor issues. Despite early warning signs and calls for more scrutiny by members of Parliament, it was only cancelled 10 years later, after a monumental £10 billion had already been spent. It's become infamous as one of the world's most expensive public sector IT failures. Law number 4, Constantine's law. A fool with a tool is still a fool. This one's a classic. Don't be fooled by new methodologies and tools thinking that they are a silver bullet to all your project woes. Now, some of you might consider me cynical for saying this, but there's often a commercial incentive behind all this, and it's usually to sell you some new software application, training courses, or professional certifications. Sure, these things can help in some ways, but they are rarely going to be a solution to the real challenges facing a project. Law number 5, Graham's Law. If they know nothing of what you are doing, they suspect you are doing nothing. This is a lesson about being visible as a project manager and keeping in regular touch with your stakeholders. Look, I know it's nice to create project dashboards and then send them out to everyone on email, but that's not engaging with your stakeholders. And in this digital age, you make a much bigger impact if you speak to your stakeholders in person, or at the very least on a virtual call. What this does is provide an opportunity to ask questions, have a dialogue, and actually build a positive and constructive working relationship. There are always operational issues on projects, and being transparent about them, solving issues collaboratively, is an important skill for the development of any project manager. So don't get stuck behind your desk all day. Get out and about and be visible to your project stakeholders. And last but not least, law number 6, Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. We're talking here about risk and risk management. No project is 100% risk-free. There are always things that go wrong. The trick is to identify the things that, if they did go wrong, would have the biggest impact on a project and proactively mitigate those risks as early in the project as possible. For example, if you're using a new piece of software technology for the first time, you can do pilot studies first to test it out and assess its suitability. Think about the case of the Scottish Police's failed I6 project, where they were trying to merge multiple systems into a single unified policing system. Now, the business case for the project seemed clear-cut. They awarded the consulting firm Accenture a £43 million fixed-fee contract for the project in 2013, only to end the contract by mutual agreement just 3 years later. The issue was that Accenture had previously done a similar project for the police in Spain, and the project teams on both sides wrongly assumed they could reuse what had been done earlier. It was a gross misunderstanding. And the sad thing is, this kind of risk could have easily been addressed through some early validation studies. So there you have it. 30 years of experience distilled into 6 laws of project management. Let's be clear. Knowing these 6 laws doesn't replace 30 years of experience. But if you're relatively early into your project management career, it will help you focus on the things that matter the most and help cut out the fluff. Now, did I miss any other important laws in project management? If so, add them to the comments below. And here are the links to some other videos that you might find useful.